the last time I can ring that. Okay, seeing it's 4 o'clock, we're going to call the meeting to order. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 land and home of the Dakota and the Métis. Approval of the agenda. Councillor Miller.
So moved. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay, and that vote is open. Councillor Lennox-Zepp.
Yes.
Missing one. That's okay. And that's carried unanimously. Declaration of conflict of interest. We all know to hand in our papers. Adoption of the minutes. Mayor Dion.
So moved.
Thank you. Okay, and that vote is open. Councillor Lennox-Zepp.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. It's carried unanimously. Delegations. Item 5.1, request to waive fees, 2022 Chester Fest. Verbal presentation from Kiana Wirtz and Joel Rose on behalf of Chesterfest Coach and Music Festival. And I don't think Kiana is here, so we got Joel coming to the mic. He's got a short, a few slides as well. And I'll get that mic open for you.
Good afternoon. My name is Joel Rose, and I'm the director and founder of Chesterfest Couch and Music Festival. We're a music festival here in Prince Albert that started 3 years ago in 2019, and we feature 100 vintage and previously loved couches for our patrons to sit on. We created the festival as there's a real need for a music festival in the city that draws international and national acts alike, bringing a higher quality festival to our city. Lots of small towns in Saskatchewan have similar festivals, Ben Golf, Swift Current, etc. And I believe that we deserve one as well, and that is the reason why I created Chesterfest. We host one festival weekend every year, normally in July. This past year it was in September due to some COVID setbacks, but we were able to host a festival this year. And we're looking to host one again as well in July of 2022. We also present an additional 6 to 8 events a year. As fundraisers for the festival, we do cabarets, New Year's events, and things like that as well, in addition to our festival weekend in July. Previously, our festival has been hosted at Parr Place and now Hop Youth Place, and we're looking to move to Little Red River Park in 2022. Each year, our annual festival features 25 acts and bands, ranging from local acts, regional acts, as well as our headliners. Some of the likes have been Chilliwack, Harlequin, and the Dead South. As I mentioned, patrons sit on 100 vintage and previously loved couches that we prepare for all of our patrons. We take donations throughout the year and place them in the field at the festival site. Between our first 2 festival years in 2019 and in 2021, we attract around 600 to 800 patrons a day, and we also feature 55 volunteers that contribute over 1,500 hours year-round as well. Waiving of the fees. We're applying to waive the fees for equipment rental and for site usage, as our current festival runs at a loss each year. There's a tremendous amount of costs that go into putting on an event of this caliber and this size. So we're looking to alleviate some of those costs so that we can continue our festival for many years to come. We're looking for slow and sustainable growth for our event. We don't want to jump to thousands and thousands of people right away. We're taking it nice and easy. hopefully build a long-lasting event for the community of Prince Albert. Chesterfest is important to our community as it helps promote local artists and musicians and encourages youth performers that we feature at our festival as well. It also puts Prince Albert on the map as a summertime music destination. Of course, we have the Rollinson Centre during the winter and the spring, but Chesterfest helps attract some acts and some fans in the summer as well. So our proposed location in Little Red River Park is not in the main portion of the park, but it is in the northeast section, just before Hans Bridge in the two big clearing fields on either side by the arrow in that picture. I believe that is all. Is there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. And we have Mayor Dion.
I'll move the recommendation, and I have one question for the guest. You said 1 year you were at Parr Place, and then where were you after that?
At Hop Youth Place. It's the same physical location, but it's now called Hop Youth, but it's still the same Parr Place location.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Hop.
Yep.
Okay, I got it. Sorry. That was it. I just wanted to confirm where you were.
Okay, and further questions for our guest, Councillor Zurkowski. I'll add you to the queue, Councillor Lennox-Zepp.
Joel, thanks for your presentation. I'm certainly supportive of what you folks are doing. I think this is, you've identified a gap in our community and the rich culture that we have and all the events that we have going on here. And there's been a bit of a gap for years. And what I like about this is, you're right, it has been grown organically by people with a passion for events like this. And it makes our communities richer. The motion is to refer to community services for review and report. So just in terms of process, Mr. Chairman, we'll see that report come back to us and then for further decisions after that, I imagine. One of the things I'd like to see in that report is, I think that as this event grows, now you're going to find a home. As it grows, I think you're going to find some sponsorship, some business sponsorship coming forward. And I think that's that approach that needs to be embraced to help alleviate the ask that you're asking and will continue to ask moving forward. So my question, I suppose, is this. Do you think that's an avenue? Have you been able to approach local businesses, or do you think that's an avenue in the future, in the short-term future, for sponsorship? Do you think that's an opportunity?
Currently, 40% of our revenue created by the festival to cover the expenses of the festival is through sponsorship dollars. Of course, Malcolm Jenkins Canadian Tire is a big one for us still, but there's still some gaps in there, and that's kind of why we're asking for the waiving of the fees on this. But yeah, sponsorship is always first and foremost. Ticket revenue, on the other hand, covers an additional 40% of our expenses as well.
Good. Thanks, Joe.
Councillor O'Gronick and then Councillor Lennox-Zepp.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Joel, for your presentation. And I, too, support Chesterfest and really appreciate what you're doing. And I really like what you said, starting out small and then, as Councillor Zurkowski said, slowly expanding. So that's a positive. And I agree that when we have a unique festival like this, which is needed in our community, that we need to support it and help it get off the ground and to be successful and then hopefully grow. So you will have my support on that. I think any community that has a viable and a very active arts community is a good community, and you definitely contribute to that with this particular festival. So thank you for your work and time on this.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Lennox-Zepp.
Thank you. I wanted to start by thanking the organizers of Chesterfest, and it is, as others have already stated, what a wonderful, wonderful event that we as a city get to have. And so I say thank you for that, for all of the positive reasons that you listed in your presentation. I have a question for the Director of Community Services. I wanted to ask, I'm trying to recall, I believe that we as a city have a policy in place in regards to when organizations request in-kind waiving of fees. And I'm just wondering if that's correct. And if we do, I'm just wondering if you could remind us if this fits into that policy. And I'm not sure if once a year we deal with that, or if you could just remind me of that policy.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Councillor Lennox Sepp's inquiry, you are correct. We do have a waiving of fees and in-kind support policy as a city. I think before we respond whether or not the request before you today fits the policy, the opportunity to review the request and report back will give us some time to, I think, just gather those specifics, make sure council's aware of all the details that would be involved in hosting this type of event at Little Red. And at that time, I think we could answer that question more specifically.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay, do we have any further questions for Joel? Hearing none, thank you very much, Joel.
Thank you.
And we have a motion up. Do we have discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll open the vote. That vote's open. Councillor Lennox Sepp?
Yes.
Okay, close, accept, and the motion is carried unanimously. Okay, moving on. Consent agenda. Would we like any pulled today? Seeing none. Councillor Zerkowski?
I'll move the motion.
Move the balance. Thank you. Okay, and that motion is open. Councillor Lennox Sepp?
Yes.
Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Moving on, reports of administration and committees. Item 7.1, City of Prince Albert Active Living Program Verbal Presentation, Judy Macleod Campbell, Arts and Culture Coordinator. Welcome, Judy. And I'll just get the mic open. There you go.
Great, thank you. So the purpose of this,
Sorry, we have the wrong motion up there. That's okay. No worries. Wasn't affecting the presentation. Sorry,
yeah,
Judy,
no,
go
no
ahead.
problem, I'll get started. So the purpose of the report and presentation is to provide information about the city's active living program for eligible employees for the consideration and approval of adding elected officials. The active living program was developed in 2006 and first started in the calendar and fiscal year January 1st, 2007. Benefits of active living are very well known, proven to increase employee health and well-being, satisfaction and engagement, productivity and morale as key. The goal of the active living program is to promote physical activity, healthy behaviors, and wellness amongst employees. There's currently 7 eligible employee groups within the active living program, and those were listed in your report, so I won't go into them. The program access has increased since its inception. The first year that we had 45 employees access the program. The highest year was in 2019 when we had 144, and that's of approximately 390 eligible employees. We have 3 components to the program. The first being a maximum of $240, and I'll get into the details of the components in just a minute. There's many employers across the province and country that provide similar programs, and in part of our research a couple years ago, we did look to what other communities are doing. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has also elevated the importance of healthy lifestyles, and in 2020, we did make some adjustments to the guidelines, which were also included in the package, to include virtual programs and equipment. So I'll get into the 3 components quickly. The first is the max 240 physical activity reimbursement. And that is 100% reimbursement for city facilities. So for example, Alfred Jenkins Fieldhouse. And of course, that's to encourage thinking COPA first. 50% reimbursement on memberships and fitness classes and programs at other institutions, such as Good Life, those types of businesses. 50% reimbursement of individual registration fees to participate in a league or a team sport, and 100% of reimbursement on physical activity. This was the added section on fitness equipment, and that excludes clothing and accessories. The second component is unlimited family public swimming and skating reimbursement, and that's of course for eligible employees and their immediate family. And then the third is physical activity, wellness challenges and initiatives. And typically we run 2 of those challenges a year just for some added fun. Again, we stress COPA facilities first. The operating year, as I mentioned, is January 1 to December 31 annually. The administrative changes since its inception, Community Services always administered this program. That's why you're seeing my face today. And then in 2018, we moved it to be administered by Johnston Group, so our benefit provider. So they look after, we do some audits and answer some questions, but they look after administering the program. If elected officials were added to the active living program, of course, we'd have to update the guidelines and some of the background information like purpose and goals to make sure it's inclusive, and then set up accounts with Johnston Group as the administrators. We do have a city COPA Active Living Committee. I won't get into who it was listed in the report. And annually, they look at the usage that we keep track of. They look at the budget for the upcoming year, and they look at any guidelines changes based on trends, funding, that kind of thing, access. We've also done employee surveys just to get feedback on the program. So adding the elected officials just for component 1, which is the max 240, would be approximately $2,200 added to the budget. The current budget is $32,000, $25,000 for the city, an additional $7,000 for the police because they do reimburse the usage back to the city for their members. And that's everything.
Okay, thanks, Judy. Do we have questions? Councillor Zerkowski.
Well, Judy, thank you for the reminder of the active living program. I'll move the motion, but I'm curious, what's the uptake now on behalf of our employees? What sort of numbers do we see year after year?
Yeah, you bet. So I did include, I know it's tiny, but I included a spreadsheet in your report. So back on the first year, 45 employees accessed it and just under $4,500. Then we took a bit of an increase in 2016, 2017, where we had 23,360. 2018 was almost 25,000, and then a bit of a drop again, I think partly due to COVID in 2020. So the highest number of employees that have accessed it was 144 in 2019. Currently, to date, because I've tracked till September, we've spent just under 17,000, and that's 85 employees.
Well, thank you for that. It's which is a good thing. The more folks involved, looking at themselves better for our employees. So, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
We have a motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll open the vote. Okay, and that vote is open. Councillor Lennox Zepp.
Yes.
Okay, and that vote is carried 7-2. Okay, item 7.2, Prince Albert Nordic Ski Club Operating Agreement, verbal presentation, Tim Yeaman, Parks and Open Spaces Manager. One moment. Podium's open. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me here today. So the purpose of this report is to formalize a 5-year operating agreement with the Prince Albert Nordic Ski Club to operate and maintain trail systems within the Little Red River Park and the Cook Municipal Golf Course. So just pardon me here. So the club has provided these maintenance services over numerous years through an informal agreement. This informal agreement was developed back in 1996, and in consultation with the club, community services in the city felt that there was a need to actually update and reflect make sure that the reflected terms were updated as well, and conditions of the agreement were also updated. This also goes to the accountability measures that were adopted with the Community Services Master Plan, where it speaks to accountability with our service clubs anytime we're providing them with grant dollars. Prince Albert Nordic Ski Club, they continue to build and maintain over 40 kilometers of cross-country ski trails at the Little Red and an additional 4.5 kilometers of ski trail at the Cook Municipal Golf Course. These trails are not only enjoyed by cross-country ski enthusiasts, but also cyclists, walkers, runners, and hikers in the spring, summer, and fall months. This trail system is a huge asset to our community and promotes an active outdoor lifestyle that benefits citizens of all ages. The Prince Albert Nordic Ski Club is very active in partnership with the city through the spring, summer, and fall months, building, reclaiming, and closing of trails throughout the park where required. They're also one of our largest user groups and also one of the most active when it comes to the trail system throughout the park. The city appreciates working with clubs like Prince Albert Nordic Ski Club, who are committed to volunteering their time to provide residents of Prince Albert and surrounding area with their expertise and abilities to create recreational opportunities. As we worked through this agreement, we did spend some time consulting with the city solicitor's office in the drafting of it, but we also spent some time consulting with the Prince Albert Nordic Ski Club in relation to the preparation of the agreement itself. From a financial perspective, the city provides the club currently with an annual operating grant of $5,000 to help offset the club's annual operating expenses, which can amount to between $17,000 and $30,000, depending on the year. Operating expenses would include groomer honorariums, repairs, maintenance, fuel, events, and programming. The club has requested the need for a capital investment from the city in the amount of $10,000 annually for the repair, maintenance, and replacement of numerous pieces of equipment that are used to ensure that the 4.5 kilometers of trail at the Cook Municipal Golf Course and over 40 kilometers of built trail system at the Little Red River Park are maintained. The club currently has a fleet of 4 motorized pieces of equipment, 7 different pieces of grooming equipment, 1 finishing mower for pre-season work to oversee the extensive trail system. Currently this year, Community Services Marketing and Sponsorship Coordinator Bruce Vance worked closely in partnership with the club in 2021 to successfully apply for and receive a $50,000 grant through the Federal Canada Healthy Communities Initiative grant. So as far as the budgeting component, we certainly recognize in most of our agreements that any budgeted amount is usually determined through the budgeting deliberation process. So the club is aware of that. So any budgeting consideration for this agreement would be followed through that process in and of itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Mayor Dion.
A couple questions, Tim. When they applied for the $50,000, what did they apply for?
They applied for, so there was criteria that was involved in this grant process. Part of the grant process was to see development of trail systems within the Little Red, so it could be reclaiming some and then opening up new ones. Also, educational opportunities, and also a portion of that to be set towards programming and also operation of the equipment itself.
Okay. Then my next question, are the lights on these trails at the Little Red on the timer?
Yes, they are, yeah.
Okay. And the timer's functional? So,
Correct, actually. We have a contractor that goes in every year, and we recognize that they're done on a dawn to dusk timer, right? And sometimes these timers actually fail, but that's why we have a contractor going every year to make sure that these are operational. So we had the contractor out last week and again today to address the lighting at the Toboggan Hill, but also address a couple of lighting issues within the trail system itself.
So in the trail system, we shouldn't see those lights on at 3 o'clock in the morning?
They should, yes, that's correct. Actually, we did recognize that there was some issues and there were faulty dusk to dawn timers. So we've currently had those all fixed and we shouldn't have any issues moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any? Sure. Push your button.
And
Mayor Dion.
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on the recommendation? Councillor Zerkowski. Thanks, Tim.
So the city is certainly very lucky to have this club involved over the decades like they have been. We've been very lucky. They've been very involved. And those trails, and in fact, much of that park wouldn't be in the good state it is now without the work and the efforts of the club members, many of which are very passionate and dedicated. So I'm very thankful for that, and as well as I know many of the users are. So now the ask is to not only have a conversation, it sounds like yearly, about capital asks in order to fulfill some of those needs, but operationally wise as well, to move that relationship, you know, if you want to talk numbers, from $5,000 to $10,000 moving forward. And that's good. My question is this: how do we ensure that that investment of tax dollars, that our voice has an echo when it comes to the needs of that park moving forward? Because it seems to me that we're into a bit of a changing relationship here now. And so if we're putting tax dollars in, we need to make sure those tax dollars voiced through the elected and through the departments and through your department, that those needs are responded to, heard, weighed. It's not just the club anymore. It's that relationship. So how do we move forward in a cooperative way? And I need some comfort knowing that the city's voice, the people that use that park, their voice will be heard.
Right, and that's a great question, and thank you very much for that. I will let you know that we have worked very hard as a department, especially this past year, and let's even go back to 2020 when COVID first hit, and we recognized that there was a great need for outdoor space, and the Prince Albert Nordic Ski Club, along with the other user groups that are out there, really did step up to the plate and gave us an opportunity to work closely with them. And I'm happy to say with the Prince Albert Nordic Ski Club, because that's who we're here talking about today, I believe we've been able to forge a great relationship with them, especially their executive. We've had numerous on-site meetings this past fall and throughout the summer, talking about different aspects of the park, especially when we talk about the bridges going in and the disruption to the ski club. They've been very accommodating, very understanding. They're very complimentary to the city. And when we talk about projects, we certainly want to hear from them, but they certainly rely on us for our guidance and direction. Also, through the process of providing grant dollars to community clubs, we also there is also a requirement for them to be able to report back and show us what they've done with those dollars as well. That's part of that accountability process that council actually wanted to see through that community services master plan, which was adopted in 2018. Yeah. So we follow that very closely and ensure that we have that relationship with our community groups as we move forward.
Do you think that there's an opportunity to, moving forward, as a bit of a revenue generator? We talked about the club. I use the trails. I've never seen an opportunity for me to pay my $10 or $20 to become a member and know where those dollars go. So I think that's another part of the conversation where if we can, I imagine the number of people that use those trails is far greater than the number of people that have a membership.
Correct.
And I don't know how to quantify that. I don't know who keeps track of that. But I think as this relationship evolves, I think somewhere around the table we need to have that benefit as well for the folks that use it. And the
Correct.
taxpayers, right? So
Yeah, and I do have access to their data. I do have access to their membership numbers. One of the things that we have talked about is we not only attract users from the city here, we attract users from across the province. So looking at park counters, right? So we've had that discussion and what that looks like. Can we install park counters and get a better idea of how many people are actually coming into our park? So those conversations are already beginning. And I think there's certainly, the PA Ski Club certainly is looking for ways to bridge that gap as well, right? From those who pay memberships to those who don't.
thanks so much, Tim.
I just want to say I'm very thankful for this group. They bring a lot of people in. Our trails that are pristine bring a lot of people to our community, and I'm thankful for the hardworking group that they are and keeping things in shape there. So, no other questions? No discussions on the motion? We're going to open the vote. Thanks.
Lennox.
Councillor Lennox, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to echo those comments, that absolutely the Nordic Ski Club, we are, lucky to have that work getting done. And I just wanted to put in a pitch that the ski trails, several of them are already groomed from this new snow and are ready for, so if there are any skiers out there, the trails have been groomed by the Nordic Club and they're ready for skiing. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. Opening the vote. And that vote is open. Councillor Lennox,
Yes.
thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Okay, item 7.3, Rotary Adventure Park, verbal presentation, Tim Yeaman, Parks and Open Space Manager. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring a report to council to provide a bit of an update of where we're at. I know there was a lot of documents that were attached to that report, and I'm hoping that some of that is good information for you to be able to digest. But today, I wanted to provide an update on the site layout of the Rotary Adventure Park, provide information on sponsorship related to the project, and secure playground equipment before a pricing increase of 9% comes into effect across all levels for raw materials to avoid the pricing increase. So we've come a long ways. This has been a project that has been 2 years, almost feels like almost 2 years in the making now. The Rotary Club of Prince Albert presented a vision to the Executive Committee on November 30th, 2020, outlining their intentions, create a legacy as part of their Centennial project. A landscape architect was engaged to create the concept plan for the club, and the estimated cost for all phases of that concept plan are between 1.4 and 1.7 million. The club originally estimated the cost of the first phase in 2022 to be roughly about 800,000, with an updated estimate of 1.2 million from the addition of more funding for specific equipment as described below. As part of this legacy building project, the Prince Albert Rotary Club was approached by Malcolm Jenkins wanting to support the concept through a donation in the way of 4 100-foot zip lines, 1 40-foot fully inclusive ADA rail rider, a brand new just released GSX large net climber, and multiple natural elements. Basically being able to accommodate 40 plus kids of all ages and abilities, and also the addition of a 12-panel Mobius climber. Basically, this is an apparatus that you can, it's almost like a rock climbing apparatus. You can climb on top and you can climb underneath it as well by holding on to these little rocks themselves. The city engaged through a design process with 7 vendors and took those 7 designs and provided opportunity to 3 of the 7 vendors provide final concept drawings for the Rotary Adventure Park, noting that only 1 design would be chosen. Winning designs were provided to the city for review and consideration, with the winning design in consultation with the Rotary Club of Prince Albert to Canadian Recreation Solutions in the amount of $788,814.90. In order to secure funds required to complete the Rotary Adventure Park, an extensive fundraising campaign is being put in place. The goal of the fundraising campaign is to raise $920,000 in cash and sponsorship to cover all other costs over and above the committed $280,000 in city funding related to the improvements. The Rotary Club, as of October 24th, 2021, has been able to raise 89.48% towards fully funding the Rotary Adventure Park, noting that they just had their last fundraising event, which has brought their total commitment to the project to close to 93% funded. So in order to secure and avoid the 9% increase on pricing due to the cost of raw materials, the following payment schedule would be required to secure and take receipt of the equipment in the 2021 calendar year. And I've provided the quotes for the equipment here. So you see there's a quote for the Rotary Adventure Park Playground at $375,779. There's the Zip Zone Playground equipment at $224,000, which would require a 50% deposit being paid to Canadian Recreation Solutions of $300,193 on or before December 3rd, 2021. The remaining 50% of the cost of equipment, including taxes, to be paid to Canadian Recreation once the city takes receipt of the equipment. So this is just for the equipment. This isn't for install at all. This is just simply to take receipt of what we would be purchasing for them for that location. And that is all that I have at this time, but if you have questions, I'd certainly be willing to answer those for you.
Okay, do we have any questions for Tim? I have one. We'll go to the others first, though. Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't have a question. I was more of a comment and willing to move this recommendation here today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zurkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim, a couple questions because people have been asking me. One of the zip lines, is it going over the river or will it be not going over the river?
Well, I'd love them to go over the river, but because of concerns with safety, no, we wouldn't be putting them over the river. But they would actually be, we did meet with the playground vendors on site as well as our survey team because we wanted to have a look at that west side of the river where the old playground used to be.
Right.
So these zip lines would be incorporated. There's a stand of trees closer to Highway 55 and they would be incorporated within that stand of trees.
Okay.
So you'd actually be zipping in and around the trees themselves.
Okay, good. So it was considered. Okay, that's good. Is it too early to start? What's the consideration since it's out at the Little Red, the surface of the facility? And my last question is, I want to make sure we don't surprise the people out there. How will the sliding hill be affected by this project?
So we've taken that into consideration. That's been the foremost on my mind in any conversation that we have. So if we're talking about the toboggan hill that's on the east side of the river, there will be no interruption to that toboggan hill in this first phase. If we're talking to the two smaller hills that are on the west side of the river, it shouldn't impact them at all. In the original concept, they were talking about wanting to put an embedded hill slide into those areas. But since looking at the site, looking at concerns with the jack pine sands, I've recommended that we not put those type of features into the hill. So we'll be staying away from that, but it shouldn't impact at all when we get to final conversations with Canadian Recreation Solutions, which will be happening over the next 2 weeks. We're going to have those final discussions on final placement, but some of the information that I provided for you, this is the information on the current placement where we're looking at right now.
Good, thank you. The surface of is it natural surface?
Yeah, so we're going to try and keep it as natural as possible. We will be introducing engineered wood fiber, so fiber in some areas because there is certain equipment where we require that fall zone from higher heights, which the jack pine sand won't be able to provide us. But for the most part, we're going to try and keep it as natural as possible. and look at also incorporating the walking paths through a natural means as well.
So before I move on to Councillor Cody, my question was on the sliding hill as well. If I'm looking at the maps of where the apparatuses are going to go, I don't know whether those are set out in stone, but it appears that they would be pretty close to that sliding hill. So we're just hoping that we're not dodging as we're coming down the hill, because if you got a guy like me on a sled, I go a long ways.
Correct. And I think there's some opportunity here to look at those hills too as we're developing this play area, and also take a look at how those hills are currently configured and whether or not we can actually slope them and shape them so that we're actually redirecting traffic. Right. There is quite a bit of distance between the main play structure and the hill itself. When we're out there, we'll be GPSing these out again in the spring, just to make sure that we have all configurations to where we want them to be. And we have some ability to be able to move this around a little bit.
That's perfect. I don't want to shed a negative light on this amazing project whatsoever, so thank you for that. Councillor Cody.
Yes, I think the project is great. I think you have to give the Rotary and Malcolm and the rest a lot of credit for putting up these dollars. But as you can note, we are putting up $280,000 as well, the City of Prince Albert. And of course, one more time, where is it coming from? It's coming from the Pohonan Parkway Reserve. And this is the second time now that we have put money from the Pohonan Parkway Reserve into playgrounds. And you know, not that you shouldn't have playgrounds, we should have, and we need them, and they're necessary. But at the same time, we have to remember, why was the Pohonan Parkway there in the first place? It was put there to beautify the riverbank. I don't think we've ever put 10 cents into beautifying the riverbank, and we're still spending the money. As you know, in 2017, the province, which they did so many things with, they took all the funding away. Right today, there's only funding for the Wascana in Regina and for the Meewasin in Saskatoon, and the rest of us second-class citizens, we go without. And that's wrong. It's wrong. We have a good riverbank here, but we also must do something with it. And we haven't done anything with it. And if we're going to spend all the money on playgrounds and or other things, then we won't have any money to do anything with, because budgets are very, very tight these days. And we have a bit of a reserve, and I think we should do something with these funds with regards to beautifying the riverbank. If you look at Saskatoon, true, they get money from various and sundry places, i.e. the university and the like at Meewasin. But you know, that riverbank is spectacular compared to what we have here. And I think we should do far more. And I think we should quit spending our money from the Pohonan Parkway. Not that we shouldn't spend the money on playgrounds, we should. But we should spend it then out of general funds, not out of that reserve. That reserve is destined for the riverbank enhancements, and it should stay there. But it seems we always dip into that fund because that's available. And I just don't agree with that. I'll certainly be voting for the motion, that's for sure, because I think it's a great thing to do.
Thank you. Councillor Ogrodnik.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll just comment on that. Like, Little Red River Park is part of the Pohonan Parkway as well. It's just not the riverbank. So yeah, I know you said about the riverbank, and I think we do have a fairly nice riverbank. Not saying that we shouldn't spend money and develop it more and commercialize it how Saskatoon has done. Obviously, they have a lot more revenue than us to do that. But that being said, my question is about accessibility to the Rotary Adventure Park. It's a great facility, and I'm going to support it, and I think it's fantastic that the Rotary Club initially presented this to us, and as a legacy for their 100 years of service to youth in Prince Albert. So it does fit, because that's what their whole mandate is they provide, they exist for youth, to give youth opportunities. And so I'm hoping that we, once this opens up and once we get it all developed, that we somehow get a shuttle service of some sort out there, not daily, but on peak times or times that would work, or through our playground, summer programming, if we could somehow, once every 3 weeks or whatever, this playground goes, and that would be their activity for that afternoon. If we could somehow do that, and eventually get to the point where we have a regular shuttle service once a week or twice a week going out to Little Red River Park for both winter and summer. Because I know Deputy Mayor Councillor Edwards had brought that up on a number of occasions for skiing and snowboarding and things like that. Kids that can't drive, and they should have access to these facilities if possible. So right now, if we could do it through the playground, that would be great. Doesn't cost a lot to get a bus going out there and then bringing them back as an activity. But I think it would be really neat to have all kids in the city be able to experience this adventure park once it gets up and running. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Mayor Dion.
So I have a question for you. When you're standing at the lodge and you're looking east, over here, is that an official ski hill, or like a tobogganing hill? Like I've noticed people when I've been out there eating that they toboggan just to the left of the lodge on the east side. Is that an official ski hill, or they just made it?
No, I think they just make it. So at the lodge, we have to the west, we have the Kinsman Ski and Snowboard Center. To the east, yes, there is a jackrabbit course for the young skiers. They teach them skills, right? And so they use that actual hill just directly to the east. I know which one you're talking about now. And they actually use that for the younger kids to teach them skills on how to brake and how to slow down.
Oh, so it's not really a toboggan hill, it's a
No,
ski
it's
hill.
not. Yeah, it's more used for skiing than anything.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Zerkowski.
Well, I just want to echo my colleagues' thoughts across the floor, because there was a time, a number of years, where we actually had a Pahonan Parkway committee. And we met with the user groups in the city, and we discussed priorities with the funding, not only from the province, but from the city. And that opportunity is no longer here. So I think once this project moves forward, I think we need to have that discussion so that we're all on the same page, or as close as we can be. And I think that conversation would help administration as well. So when opportunities and priorities come forward, there's clear direction and there's an understanding of where those purposes of that fund for the Pahonan Parkway and the issues that come out of it, so we can establish some priorities and wishes, I suppose, at least plan for them when those dollars are available.
Thank you. No other discussion? Want to open the vote?
Chair Lennox up, please.
Councillor Lennox up.
Thank you. A comment and then a question for the Parks Manager. For the comment, I'm very pleased to hear that this project is able to go ahead with the intention of not impacting the tobogganing at that location. I think that your comments are great, and to consider at the bottom of the hill as well, to intend not to impact sliders coming down to the bottom of the hill, because it appears that this project can complement tobogganing, and that tobogganing can complement this project. So that is a positive. My question is about the zip lines. I had a resident ask me if the zip lines are the type that you hold on to with your hands, or if they're the type that you would actually put on a harness. They were just wondering if this type of zip line requires a supervisor or not, and I just thought I would ask that.
Yeah, so these wouldn't be similar to Trio 6, which currently you have to have certified operators to be able to do that. These ones you're able to actually either sit or stand and be able to hold on. So they're probably 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and then you zip across that 100 feet, and then you'll connect with the next zip line and come back, and so on and so on. So there will be no need for a harness, no need for a helmet, and this is what we could work within as far as CSA standards for playgrounds to ensure that we could still provide something that's fun and exhilarating, but without having to worry about the safety aspect of it.
Perfect. Thank you so very much.
Okay, now I'm going to open the vote. Thank you. That vote's open. Councillor Lennox Zepp?
Yes.
Okay, accept that, and that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving forward, item 7.4, Royal Canadian Legion request to place monuments in Memorial Square. Verbal presentation, Judy, Director of Community Services.
I changed the motion to refer it back to Community Services for a further report.
So no verbal presentation?
No.
No. Okay, good to know. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'm going to open the vote. And that vote is open. Councillor Lennox Zepp?
Yes.
Thank you. Missing one. Oh, there we go. Okay, and that's accepted and carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item 7.5, increase in taxi fares, verbal presentation. Cheryl Kachuk, Director of Financial Services.
Good afternoon. Administration received a request from Grey Cab Limited and Checker and Family Taxi to increase fares as indicated in the attached correspondence dated November 5th. In 2020, the city reviewed the taxi bylaw and established bylaw number 29 of 2020. That bylaw was updated to current standards and taxi fares was added as requested by stakeholders during consultations. The rates were set at the current amounts charged by taxi brokers at this time. Taxi brokers believe rates have not increased since 2018, but there have been increases in the taxi industry's operational costs, such as gas prices, repair rates, and wages, with an increase in demand for used vehicles. If this proposal is agreeable, I will forward the updated bylaw for approval with public notice published for November 19th.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. Questions? Councillor Miller.
I'll move the motion.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Zerkowski.
A couple questions, if I may. Are there any other aspects to this request other than, or to this proposal other than a simple request moving forward? Are there any other checklists that we as a city should be going through? Are there any other metrics that we need to take a look at? Anything else other cities do? It seems to me that this ask came through the city from the cab companies, and that was the only process involved?
Correct. So in 2020, when we proposed the changes to the taxi bylaw, we had discussions with taxi accounts, taxi brokers, and at that point, the input was put into the bylaw, and one of them that they had asked for was the rates. There was changes made to that bylaw, substantial changes made to the taxi bylaw in 2020, such as ceiling meters and making sure the appropriate documentation is identified correctly, because there was, in the old bylaw, there was references to certain documentation that was no longer called what it was anymore. So all of that detailed process and procedure was all updated at that time in 2020. And now we're at that time, we had said to them, rates can be in the bylaw. That is something we can do. However, you'd have to let us know when those rates, you would request to have those rates increased.
So it sounds like our process is increase the rates when asked to.
Essentially, yes, because this bylaw did not have any rates in it previous to that. And that was one of the things that they wanted us to include in there. It makes it a little bit more standardized across the whole taxi industry in Prince Albert. A lot of other cities do have their rates in the bylaws as well.
What about the increases in their rates? I'm curious if there's any comparables available and what goes on in other cities, North Battleford, Regina, Saskatoon, Yorkton, insofar as the increases there. Do they need to be increased? I don't know. Are we simply going to respond to the request and say yes? It seems like we're missing some data here that I'd like to see before we jump in 2 feet.
You are correct. We didn't compare it to other cities. What we found when we did the bylaw last in 2020, it varied quite a bit. But we can take it back and ask them, have you done your homework with this? Yeah. But we do know that there has been cost increase since the last 2-3 years.
I'd be surprised if they didn't have it, that they'd be expected to, the city would ask for that, some justification for the increase. I guess that's what I'm asking for. I'm looking for some justification for the increase other than just a request to increase the rates.
One of the things we are going by the notes that they had supplied us with in their correspondence about gas repairs,
Sure.
Vehicles.
Yeah. Okay.
I just have a couple of comments before I go to you, Mayor. I think that they're losing out on some revenue. But I don't know whether it's necessarily from the rates that are charged, because I think the rates they're fairly, well, they're high, I think. It's getting expensive to jump in a cab and take that ride. But where they're losing out, and I did talk to a couple of taxi drivers, is not being paid for their ride. They drive people, and people go, and they don't pay. And that's a concern. And I know that there's no policy in place that says people must pay up front. But I'm wondering if there's something that we can look at where there's a minimum of $10 paid up front before we move. Because I think that's something that we need to look at, if that can help them. Because if we don't put that in, it gives advantages to different cabs. No, we don't ask for that minimum up front. And I know the drivers, if they ask for it up front and they have some suspicion that, you know what, this person may not pay me, they just get grief. I think we need to give them that right to charge up front. And I don't know whether that's part of our bylaw amendment that we can do, but I'm looking for some options there for that.
From what I understand, when we had looked at the bylaw earlier, there are different things that we can put in place. If anything, it's more whether the bylaw would be enforceable. So that's something I believe that we could, and that is something we could put in the bylaw, would give taxi drivers that ability to collect maybe something. But that is something we could put in the bylaw. I believe it is not in the bylaw right now.
Okay, so moving forward, how do we get that? This has to go back to council.
Correct. We'd have to have you could put it in as a recommendation, then we would bring it forward in a report with an amended bylaw.
Wonder if the mover would be willing to do that.
Sure, yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much. Mayor Dion.
Well, I have a couple comments. Number one, we should be looking at the other city rates, not asking the taxi company, because they'll pick and choose. It should be us, because they're asking us for the increase. So it should be us that are checking with Saskatoon, Regina, Moose Jaw, other cities, okay? because all I've heard and some experience is the cost to take a taxi. The other thing I found you interested is when you said one of the costs of the increases that they went up was used vehicles. Don't they buy new vehicles for cabs? Like,
Seldom.
yeah, well.
They're usually used.
I know, but to me, if I'm paying this high rate, I expect a high quality of a ride. So I won't be supporting it because it says to prepare the bylaw, and there's still too many questions for me. Like, I need to know other cities' rates. Like, this just says, we agree and you're gonna move the bylaw. Okay, bring the report back. Well, to me, we need another report back before we consider rates, is what other cities doing. The other thing is, I also need to know before I support this bylaw, is how do we track the apps that they're now using? Like now the meter comes on, it's sealed by the city of PA, we know the rates. But now, for some reason, we're allowing them to use an app. I don't know if that's in the bylaw right now, that they can do that. Because who checks the app? How does that app meter the mileage? Like, I don't understand. I understand apps can do wonderful things, but I just don't feel comfortable when when I get in a cab and he pushes his phone. You know, the meter, I know how that works. It clicks with the mileage and it works. And then, so you know if you're paying $1 a kilometer, you're getting a kilometer. So, and that's why we put the seal on it. So how does the city, maybe I'll ask this direct question to you. How does the city then calibrate and check those apps? Like, does anyone know how they work? Like, we calibrate the meters now and the rates and we put a seal on it so it can't be tampered with. These apps, I assume you could just change it, like on my phone when I'm sending a text. I don't know how it works. So,
Director?
I don't have the details on how the app works. So that is something we could put in the bylaw as well.
I noticed she changed the recommendation. Is that all right with the mover?
Yeah, I was
because
just
there's
gonna
so many
ask
questions.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that because there's lots of questions. Thank you, and I'll support the motion.
Yeah, to an executive meeting, correct? Yes, for sure. Great. Any further discussion on the amendment? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, I'm happy to see this motion. I was quite concerned with us moving just a simple increase without having those conversations. I think it's imperative not only to keep a safe ride for our residents, but ensuring that we're getting the proper information from these companies and also what the rest of some of the provinces is doing around as well. It's important that we keep these rides affordable as well. And so I'm glad to see this report coming back to us. Thanks.
Good, thank you. Okay, we're going to open the vote. And that vote is open. Councillor Lennox-Zepp?
Yes.
Oh, it's not open, sorry. It's not accepting my, now it's open and it's closed. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're moving forward to item 7.6, bylaw number 15 of 2021, the Fire Services Bylaw. Verbal presentation, Chris Olson, Fire Chief. One moment.
Yes, well, good evening, everyone, Deputy Mayor, Mayor and Council. Yes, lots of questions. What do I have before you is bylaw number 15 of 2021, which is the Fire Services Bylaw, for your consideration to replace bylaw, the current bylaw, 22 of 2008. So, yeah, it's been a long time coming. Not only the fire services or the fire department put a team together, which included the inspectors, some officers, and management, of course, to review the bylaw. This bylaw, though it impacts the entire corporation, has been across many desks. As you'll see, you can see all the points that go through that were changed, revised, or are new. For your benefit, I guess, I will just cover the high-level items that I considered to be of a major change. So in saying that, the overview, adjustment, and amendments and additions to this bylaw are a complete overview of the bylaw, which includes editing, formatting, and realigning the sections to include pertinent subsections. A new requirement for carbon monoxide alarms in all residential dwellings containing a fuel-burning appliance or storage garage. I will add to this bylaw requiring carbon monoxide in all residential homes and storage garage is augments and marries up with the provincial legislation that will be enacted July 1st of this coming year. And a complete new section specific to fire ban. It was separated out. There was reference to fire ban prior, and the wording hasn't had a major change, but I thought I'd point that out to you. The big one, I think that will raise some questions, is a complete ban on low hazard fireworks within the municipal boundaries of Prince Albert. Now, through question inquiry from council, from the public, through council, this has been, one of the main drivers to change and for us to look at the bylaw. And, we did our homework. We looked at other municipalities within the West, and it's becoming a resounding theme where low hazard fireworks are a concern to municipalities. New notice of violations. This would enable fire department members to issue fines identified in Schedule C. I highlighted this one because it's a big change. Our prior bylaw 22 of 2008 allowed summary offense. And, from a fire department standpoint, the concern or troubles with the summary offenses, a lot of the fines, or a lot of the contraventions, we weren't able to see it through without a fine. So that's Section C, or Schedule C, is a big change for the city of Prince Albert if approved by council. Again, update to Schedule A, which is fees for services provided. We reviewed all the fees necessary to provide service, and so that the end user was bearing the labor or the time costs or the equipment costs of the services that they would be getting from the Prince Albert Fire Department. And then lastly, as a high-level overview, is the new Schedule C, identifying the proposed fines for specific National Fire Code and bylaw offenses. If approved by council, will give us the tools our inspection branch needs, our operation members need responding to fire bans, code compliance, and the fines that are identified in Schedule C. So I'll open, of course, if you have questions. I didn't go over every point that was revised or changed, but if you have something, let me know.
Okay, thank you. Chief Councillor Kilmer.
Thank you for the tremendous amount of work that went into this. I do have questions on the fire hydrant section. So I just, before we go further into detail, I think in Section B, the private fire hydrants, when I read that section, I don't think it clearly identifies who specifically is responsible for maintaining. I think we're missing some wording, but maybe that was intentional. I'm not sure, but when I read it, like, for example, how many private fire hydrants do we have in our city?
Our records indicate that we have 62 private hydrants. However, our inspectors were tasked prior to COVID with, shoring up and confirming those numbers. So that is the latest data we have on private hydrants in the city. I guess to answer your question, Councillor Kilmer, regarding the testing, I just know what I know for my time with the city of Prince Albert. Talking to other municipalities, the whole private hydrant issue is, it's been dealt with, and it is dealt with by other means, being a public utility. So this bylaw section that you're referring to was, if I'm not mistaken, was not revised. So this is the wording from the last bylaw 22 of 2008. So when it comes down to flushing and annual testing of private hydrants, I think the intent under section V, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, is the intent that
Yeah.
the owners of the private hydrant pick up the cost and make it happen?
Correct, and that does occur. The inspectors, will put notice together, and they will, just like a smoke detector inspection, which is further on, and now to become the carbon monoxide inspection, is borne by the property owner or tenant for the smoke alarm.
I think it can make it really more crystal clear by adding the words by owner in some of the language that we're using. For example, I'm just trying to think about us making sure that absolutely the private owner bears responsibility for a working fire hydrant. It says in that section, records of annual inspection and testing of private fire hydrants shall be submitted to the fire chief annually. And there's really no, every calendar year. So then the responsibility is on the owner to do that versus us having to contact them to make sure that they've done it unless they're not in compliance. In my opinion, right here, it's a little bit of a gap and leaves, I'm not sure, I'm not a lawyer, but I just feel like it's not specific enough so that for sure the owners of that private fire hydrant bear the responsibility.
Correct. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. When it comes down to annual inspection and, to ensure that those hydrants are exercised, our inspection branch, they action that. Okay. So they have the areas that they have to visit on an annual basis. And, I hear what you're saying regarding timelines, but their strict timelines are based on the weather factors. So they start in spring and those have to be completed. For instance, we have a mail out that will be going out this coming spring for a deadline of August. So they manage that, but I do see where you're coming from with the clarity in the bylaw.
And then a question maybe for Public Works or for you. A private hydrant does not go through a water meter, correct? Or it does?
Oh, one moment.
Thank you for that question. You're correct. Fire hydrants don't go through a water meter. So, but the ones that you're speaking of, the private ones are on private property versus the ones in the city that are on public property. So we stay away from them completely unless in the case of a fire, then the fire department uses them. So they pay for all the maintenance to them. They pay for the repairs to them. But you're right, none of them are metered. They can't be metered because of the size of the flow that's required for a fire.
Okay, thank you very much. So I do have difficulty going through this bylaw without it being more specific in that area, and I'm not sure if I'm being too picky.
City Solicitor, if you'd push your button, I can let you talk here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. We can certainly work with the fire chief to look at the language in that particular section. The Fire Services Department did enlist our services we have assisted them with the reviewing of the bylaw. However, I would concede that there was more focus on new sections than there were on the existing sections in there. So that's certainly one that we can go back to look to put some eyes on and redraft.
Thank you. Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you, Fire Chief, for the updates on this bylaw. Just a couple questions. So happy to see it's clear. It talks about low hazard versus high hazard fireworks. Whereas before, it was always in there that you weren't allowed to set them off within the city, but now a little bit more clear. There's some exceptions for a high hazard versus low hazard. So I think it's very clear in that regard. But I do have a question around notice of violation. So I'm looking at 40A, and it says the fire chief or his or her designate of our fire inspector may, as an alternative to proceeding by the way of summary conviction, issue a notice of violation. So I guess that's the part I'm having or feel like is lacking. These fireworks are happening at night, and I'm curious in how we're going to enforce this bylaw, because these things happen pretty quickly. Someone sets them off in a schoolyard, neighbors hear it after the fact, and then people are gone to kind of find out who set them off, who's responsible for, who's going to pay the $500 fine, which is, I'm happy to see that's also included in here. But yeah, just more around general enforcement, and it seems like that you will be the one issuing those convictions versus, violations versus our bylaw officers, which I know are working through those today. So a couple questions there.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Head. Good question. I will talk briefly about the City of Vancouver, who enacted a complete ban on their fireworks, and the press released that there was very little compliance. And they put extra officers on the street, extra bylaw officers, and had a tough time. So I'm not denying that it won't be an issue when fireworks are being let off in public spaces, and these events aren't long-lasting events, as we all know. So not denying that it will be an issue. But however, we now have the ability to fine, which we didn't in the past. So it was only a summary offense. So I think we've given the department some tools, and how successful we are is yet to be seen.
Okay, thanks for that. No, I look forward to some of those, I guess a report coming up about how we are advancing with this when it does become official. But thanks, I know a lot of the residents in my ward have been, quite concerned with some of the fireworks we're seeing. I imagine around the city as well, but I've been hearing a lot of it, so happy to see it in here, and thank you for that work.
Mayor Dion.
I have a couple comments on fireworks, but I'm going to jump on to the hydrant one first, especially the private ones. Okay, you just heard in the bylaw, you have to supply an inspection report on your hydrants. Don't worry about the bylaw. I used to have a facility that has 6 private ones. You have to realize they're a part of our insurance regulations why we have to have them. And the insurance takes care of the hydrants. They have to be tested, and then we also have to file a report to them. So the hydrants, private ones, I'm not worried about because they're mandated and they have to supply a report that they work. And I can assure you, we make sure they work because if we have a fire, you need your hydrants. Now, on fireworks, okay, it doesn't touch in the bylaw about who can sell them. And why I say that is, boy, fireworks are getting like liquor. You can almost buy them anywhere now. You go to gas stations, they're everywhere, fireworks for sale. And is there an age limit? Like the other day, I've seen kids, I would have thought 15, 16, buying fireworks. These low fireworks, even though they're low, are still dangerous. You can still blow your hand off with them. So I'm interested, is there anyone that has a bylaw that says who can sell them? And if not, and if anyone can sell them, can we put an age on who can buy them? To me, when you're buying something that could maim you, there should be an age limit. And it should be high. It should be 19 or 21 or, it shouldn't be allowed youth to be able to go into the local gas station and buy fireworks. That's unacceptable to me. And
Mayor, just to interrupt, that is in the bylaw, the age.
There is an age?
Yes. Yes, Mayor.
If I can, I missed that part.
If I move you to section 36, subsection C. Sorry, I gotta put my glasses on. Subsection B. No person shall sell any low hazard fireworks to another person unless the purchaser is 18 years of age or older. And any contravention of subsection, or of section 36 is liable for a $500 fine.
Okay, and can anyone sell them?
Well, there's definitions for high hazard as they have to be
No,
approved.
I'm talking
but
low hazard.
Low hazard, not currently in this bylaw. Now, I will lead you to the city to the south. They have a permitting process in place for fireworks permits. But again, enforcement is an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kilmer.
I would like to amend the recommendation that oh, sorry, I don't have to do that. The one that is up there does fit very well. I would also like to just add for the council's understanding that I do understand what the mayor says about the insurance and the private fire hydrants, but I am aware of a private fire hydrant in a community living area that hadn't been inspected for 10 years. Yeah, and so that brought my attention to why I paid attention to that.
Thank you for that. Okay. Any other discussions? No, so we have a motion up on the board. Have a look, it's been changed a little bit. And we're going to open the vote. And that vote is open. Councillor Lennox Epp?
Yes.
Motion's accepted and approved unanimously. Item 7.7, procedural bylaw amendments, verbal presentation. Sherry Person, City Clerk. Do I have to do something with your?
No,
Okay.
I have my own button.
Good. Go ahead, Sherry.
Okay, so the city's procedure bylaw regulates the proceedings of city council and council's committees. Over the last few years, members of council have suggested some changes to the bylaw to better serve their elected roles during meetings. In addition, I have noticed some areas that required wording amendments or realignment to current practices. So as outlined in the report, possible amendments to the bylaw are as follows. First, minor additions and wording cleanup. So as outlined in the report, we would like to add a few definitions, minimize some wordiness in a few sections, more clearly outline the role of the agenda review working group, and ensure similar wording in several sections, or at least referencing to a particular section. Secondly, motion to rescind section. This suggested amendment would allow administration to bring forward a recommendation to City Council to rescind a motion that may no longer be necessary or could not be reasonably completed due to extenuating circumstances, unforeseen financial expenses, or simply not achievable given the available resources. So we've had a few cases where there are certain items that may need to be looked at, but administration really actually has no ability to even bring them forward. They would have to be a notice of motion by council, but we would at least like to bring them forward for your ability to review them. The recorded vote section. With the new computerized voting system now utilized in the council chamber, every vote on a motion by members of City Council is recorded and can be easily inserted for every motion into the minutes of all City Council meetings. Please remember this is only applied to City Council, as committee meetings do not have recorded votes. Remote participation section. Also with the improvements to the council chamber, a remote member is able to fully participate in the council meetings. Therefore, procedures have been identified within the report that can be utilized more easily for city council meetings. Media attendance section. So the practice for media attending meetings in the council chamber was recently updated to minimize disruptions of meetings held in the council chamber. This practice is simply being requested to be formalized within the bylaw. Committee procedure section, as outlined in the report, there are 3 separate sections within the committee procedures that need to be modified slightly. Specifically, members of council have had a concern over the last few years with advisory committees referring reports directly to the budget committee. Therefore, subsection 7724C is being requested for committee decisions to only be reported to either council or executive committee. So if these amendments are approved for inclusion in the procedure bylaw, a new procedure bylaw will be compiled, forwarded for public notice, and brought forward for consideration at the December 13th City Council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? Questions? Mayor Dion.
I'll move the recommendation, and I'd like to thank the city clerk because I think she covered off most of the notes of issues that we've had in the last year, so I kind of like it that she takes notes of it and then towards the end of the year comes corrected because it helps us be more streamlined and professional. So thank you for bringing this report.
Thank you. Councillor Ogrodnik.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, City Clerk, for your report as well. I just have 2 concerns in the report. And number 4, remote participation, requiring 24 hours notice. I think that for me anyways, it might not work. When there's wildfire smoke and it rolls in that day, I can't come here. And so that would mean then I would have to be declared absent or missing a meeting because I wouldn't be able to give you the 24 hours notice. So I would like, I don't know, I don't think that that's right, but if that's the will of council to require 24 hours notice, then that's what it requires. But I would hope that there would be exceptions, or there would be, exceptions for health reasons made, that you don't have to give the 24 hours. Second point is section 14, where it talks about agendas. I would really like us to get a little bit more active with the public and have it part of our agendas to not only report them to us, etc., what it says, but also to include that agendas be put on social media, Twitter, Facebook, things like that, by the city clerk's office or by communications or somebody like that, so that the public has that agenda and then as members of council we could then share it and get it out to all members of the public, rather than it relying on members of council to do that exclusively. So those are just 2 suggestions that I would like to see changed here. But other than that, thank you for all your hard work in doing this.
Okay, those comments are noted. Councillor Head.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Again, I'm going to echo some of Councillor Grodnick's comments as well. I think the 24-hour notice is a little restrictive. I think there's going to be at times things that come up, and we try to be here, but life gets in the way at times. So I'd like to see some exception or to that rule, and as well as the agenda, not only having the ability to share online, but a little earlier as well. I know sometimes they don't come out till Thursday, and I know that might put some unrealistic demands on some of the administration, but it'd be nice to get that a little earlier, as well as access to share online.
I do think that's part of the issue is preparing those reports on time. Mayor Dion.
Well, I'll change the motion that the clerk adjust the notice period for coming online. Remote participation to allow for medical reasons. or an unforeseen emergency.
Good.
Because I just don't want to do medical. With putting, I won't agree to put, I don't agree to put our agenda online on Facebook and stuff. If people want to see our agenda, we're elected to respond to the public. And if they want to see the agendas, it's available on our website. They're posted when we get them Thursday at 4 o'clock. And I think that's necessary. So I do some councillors are uncomfortable making decisions, so they do put it online and ask the general public how they should vote, you know, which is up to them. I got elected by the public to represent them, and I'll represent them to the best of my ability. And we have enough, at least in my case, I'm busy enough when I read all the 500 and some pages, I don't have to, you know, worry about other people's opinion or take texts from people while the discussion's going on. So I won't agree with that, but I certainly agree that we should adjust the remote. That was a good argument, especially the smoke situation. I got caught in that one day too. And so that's the only change that I propose in my motion. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any more lights on here. We're going to go to the vote.
Tara Lennox, please.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Lennox up.
Thank you. I'll note under remote participation, sub 4 states that the mayor may determine a limit to the number of remote members in a meeting in consultation with the clerk. I'm not aware of why we would want a limit to the number of remote members in a meeting. I am aware that other cities in Saskatchewan have held 100% fully remote meetings for over a year time period during COVID. So I'm not aware of why we would want sub 4. And sub 5 states the mayor shall not be a remote member unless all council members attending the meeting are remote members. And I'm not aware of why we would want to make that a requirement, that the mayor not be able to be a remote member unless all members are attending remotely. Of course, the mayor chairs the meetings of city council. However, I would think that there are ways to deal with that differently than just requiring that the mayor not be able to be remotely. Thank you.
Okay. Sure, go ahead.
I just want to speak to Councillor
Yeah,
Lennox.
absolutely.
Councillor Lennox, the situation with the limit to the number is other cities are utilizing their meetings with all members of council using Section 8 of our procedure bylaw, which means a complete meeting through electronic means. That's the section we would utilize, not remote participants. Remote participants is that new section is just for people when there is a meeting here in the chamber and that there are some outside remote participating. But meeting through electronic means a whole meeting would be Section 8, which we're not asking to change.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we're going to the vote. Vote is open. Councillor Lennox up.
No.
Okay, and the motion is carried 8-1. Okay, unfinished business, we have none. And motion to adjourn. Councillor Kilmer.
So moved.
Thank you. And we'll go to that vote. Oops. And that vote is open. Councillor Lennox Zepp.
Yes.
And the motion's carried. And we're adjourned.